Oh, Afilay, are we still friends or what? Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending today's JGO committee. With the amendment. We've got a second. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Now we move on to item 3, public comments. In the chamber, we do have Attorney Robert Glass to discuss several comments. Attorney Glass, upon your comments, can you please reference the House bill that you will be commenting on? And then that way we can follow through. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Oh, now I can really hear myself. All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, my name is Robbie Glass. I'm the Chief Solicitor here at the CNMI here on behalf of the Attorney General. I know the Keisha King bill, House Bill 2233, is up for debate today. I would say that's the primary reason I am here. The Office of the Attorney General supports this bill. We support passage of this bill as it's written. I believe this is a very necessary bill to correct a lot of what we see happening in our community. One of the things that this bill really does very well is that it doesn't allow repeat offenders to just keep getting released back into our community. And it also allows the prosecutor's office to get a say before bail, to be notified when bail is happening, so that prosecutors can present the evidence. Now, the prosecutors, it's very important to remember, are the ones that represent the people of the CNMI in a criminal prosecution, right? And they've taken an oath to do justice in a case, right? We're not out there just trying to get a conviction. We're not out there trying to put people in jail. We're out there to seek justice. And sometimes justice is those things. Sometimes justice is removal from the community for a bit in jail. Sometimes justice is not going to jail. Sometimes it's paying a fine. Sometimes it's being on probation. Sometimes justice is dismissal of a case. And we do all of those things. But when repeat offenders get out there and continue to harm our citizens, it is our job to do something about it. And so we do support this bill. This is a bill that will really help in that endeavor. The other House bills that I believe were up for debate today, House Bill 2236, which is getting rid of that 7-day grace period on insurance. I will speak a little bit as the former traffic prosecutor on that. I don't know that that has ever even been utilized in my time here. So I'm not aware of any cases where somebody got a ticket and actually came in within that 7 days to resolve their insurance thing. And so it's up to the legislature if you guys want to get rid of that 7-day grace period, but I just want to provide that I'm not sure that it was even something that was happening. We do get a lot of insurance tickets, individuals that don't have insurance. I will say that one of the things that we try to do is encourage people to get insurance. So we do work with them on that in the court system as well, so that they can go get insurance and resolve their ticket. So I think this is a bill that will be helpful in that because it'll just get people straight into court, maybe even a little faster, so that we can get them to where they need to be and having insurance so we don't have uninsured motorists on the road. There's also House Bill 2237, which is directed to reduce the time for reports from 10 days to 3 days. The office has provided written comments on this. The only thing really of note that I would say about this bill is it includes this punishment towards officers who fail to get the reports done in 3 days. I think that's really detrimental to the officers. I think that's really detrimental to our prosecutions because when officers get suspended or they get some kind of punishment, that goes in their personal file. And what happens when we actually have trials or we have hearings is they get attacked for those things, right? And a jury starts to go, well, should I believe this person that has these reprimands in their file? And when you're reprimanded for something as small as not getting a report done within 3 days, and you're talking about major cases, if you're talking about rapes and murders and even drug transactions and things, right? That's detrimental to those cases. And so I don't think that's a provision that's really going to actually help in that. I think rather I would request that this body take action and maybe trying to ask DPS to do internal policies for these things. I think that would be a lot better of a route to get this stuff done because it'll be very clear for DPS when they have an officer who's constantly not getting reports done in time. And they can take internal matters into that, right? They can have somebody come in and say, hey, today instead of being out on patrol, you can sit at your desk and write your reports so that we get them done. I think that's a better way to really go about this. However, we did provide this is constitutionally allowed, and so that's in our comments as well. But I really would like this body to think very hard about whether punishment for not getting it done within 3 days is really the necessary and best route for that. The last bill was House Bill 2238, which is the Jaywalking bill. This bill's come up a few times in the past. I know we've offered some comments in the past on it. We offered comments again, mostly about the constitutionality of it. Again, this is a constitutional bill. It's something that can be passed. However, again, as a prosecutor, I would say this is probably going to be very hard to enforce. It takes this approach from having this 200 feet designation, that somebody can't cross the street if there's a crosswalk within 200 feet. And so I think that's what's going to end up being the focus of a lot of tickets and things is, well, were they within 200 feet? And so you're asking officers to have to go out basically with a tape measure to go, oh, yeah, it was only 198. Obviously, there are places on island where it's very clear that there's not a crosswalk within 200 feet. But when we're talking about like the Garapan district, right, I don't know if it's every 200 feet or not. But you're talking about something that would really be hard to prove when you get into court and have an officer that's being asked, well, did you take the tape measure out? Did you do that? And so I think that this is just going to be very hard to do it. I would encourage, I think this is a good bill and that jaywalking is a problem, but I think we can keep working on it to get it to a better place.
Thank you, Attorney Glass. So, the three bills that you commented on, we have the writer of those bills here, Rep. Flores. Rep. Flores, did you want to ask any clarifying questions in regard to the AG's comments on any of the bills that you introduced?
Let's begin with the insurance. Okay, I don't know if you're aware. I'm a retired police officer too. Okay, and being in every department for 20 years. When Public Law 11-55 came about regarding insurance, I was in charge of traffic section. So whenever an instance when we issue a traffic citation, we issue regarding the insurance. And then in that insurance citation, it was given 7 days grace period for them to get an insurance. So what happened? What happened to that in the situation is motor vehicle. So yeah, motor vehicle is supposed to be responsible to facilitate the registration to reduce, because the original says $250 for insurance. So when you with the 7 grace period and you furnish your insurance, they'll reduce that 350 to 150. But you mentioned earlier that it was never a case. Was the reason why it was never a case was because there was never been follow up through. Nobody was tasked actually to really look into it. So whenever the citation comes in, they just put it aside because they don't want to deal with it. So having this, removing the grace period it's like this when you get your car registration. The car registration, your car registration has to be in the glove compartment at all times. So whenever you get pulled over, the officer can see driver's license registration. Your registration has to be there in the glove compartment. So now with the public law, the 1155 insurance, it's mandated for you to have insurance. So this bill is making sure that you have an insurance card. Yes, in the car registration, your insurance number is written there, but where's your card? There's a lot of instances when a motor owner, they go and renew the car registration, renew their insurance, and as soon as they register their car motor vehicle, they cancel their insurance, right? So in having them not having the insurance card and really having the number written in the car registration with no proof that it's actually insured. So removing that 7 grace period is giving the persons right there and then when they said the officer pulls them over, can you see driver's license and car registration and insurance card? No proof, right? You're giving a citation, basically making it the same fundamental as car registration. Your car registration and insurance card is to be a glove compartment all times whenever you get pulled over. This is the bill actually to remove that, to make it easier and to make the fine more appropriate and more distinguished. How you're gonna go about with the fine with the car registration and insurance?
Thank you, Rep. Flores. And I think in your future comments for all the other bills that you'll be commenting on, if we can keep that to 2 minutes. We are on a time constraint. There is something else happening at 11, and there are other items on the agenda that need to be moved. Attorney Glass, do you have anything else to say? Because I know you made it very clear where you stand with the AG. However, then I open the floor to the comments of the members. Any members to either rebuttal or support Rep. Flores's position on this particular bill? The floor is open.
Chair, I think, may I? I think we need to dispose of the concerns first of Mr. Glass so we can excuse him from this before we proceed next committee meeting. Because right now we are under public comments. We're not supposed to be deliberating on the legislation. What we're doing right now is we're having Rep. Flores deliberate his position on the legislation when we're under public comments by Mr. Glass, and this is the wrong time to be deliberating on the legislation.
So my apologies, Rep. Flores. That was a very moving testament of your support in your bill. My apologies, Attorney Glass. I tend to forget that there's public comments, and we can't have the public and the reps kind of in the discussion at the same time. If there are no further comments from you, I would like to dismiss you, and thank you again for coming and commenting on the proposed bills on the agenda. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And I mean, if there are any questions, especially about the bail bill, I know there was other comments and things. I'd be more than happy to answer questions so that everything's cleared up, especially if I didn't make any of my positions very clear on it as well. I would like to, if I'm allowed, at least answer the questions. I don't intend to get into the debate about them, but if there are specific questions about our position and how we have talked about it, then I'd be more than happy to answer questions like that.
Madam Chair, may I just point of clarification? We're under public comments. What we can do is we dispose of public comments and we can get back to the main motion of the committee, and then we can break into committee of the whole and ask questions. It's not, we're not supposed to be asking questions under public comments. We're just supposed to allow them to speak, and then we go back as once we're done the public comments, we can go back to the agenda, and once we get to those legislations, we can go down to the committee of the whole, so we can ask those questions. Not during public comments, because then the general public would start moving ahead and doing the same thing. And when we come to sessions, and we shouldn't be in that situation.
And again, thank you, Rep. Atel, for your point of clarification. A lot of us are kind of moving along in this process. So my apologies, Rep. Flores. My apologies to the rest of the committee members. My apologies to the general public who are now witnessing and are participating in this live event. Attorney Glass, again, my apologies for that. So we are now past public comments, and we will now, seeing that there's no other comments from the chamber, we are now past and close public comments, and we're moving on to the next item, which is old business. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just reiterating on Representative Atto, if there's no objection, if we can dissolve into committee of the whole.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay. All right, with that said, and now we've dissolved into a committee as a whole, and it was seconded by Rep. Attal. Rep. Flores, I guess the point of order now is, okay. Okay, so I'm sorry, Attorney Glass, can you go ahead and respond to Rep. Flores's concern?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so Rep. Flores, I think that was a great point, right? The goal is to have everybody insured, right? And we absolutely want everyone insured. Uninsured motorists cost everyone money. And so I believe that is the goal. We are in support of actually removing the grace period. I don't want to not be clear on that. So we are in support of the bill to remove it. My point was just simply that I hadn't seen anyone that had actually ever gone into DPS with their new insurance to try to say, hey, don't give me the ticket anymore for that. And if that's happened, then great if people have taken advantage of that. I do think this is something that can play out in the traffic court system as well, that we can ensure through after once they get the citation that they go and get insurance as well. And so that, again, the goal being we get everyone insured. Now, if somebody calls up and tries to do a fraud by getting insurance, getting a card, and then canceling it, I mean, there's not a whole lot, that you can do just looking at a piece of paper that says, hey, someone is insured without actually calling the insurance company to verify. And so that certainly we can look at that as being part of the process, perhaps. But for now, I mean, I do want to be clear. We do support the removal of it. I was just pointing out that we hadn't seen anybody that had really taken advantage of it.
Thank you, Attorney Glass. Rep. Flores?
So you're saying you're in support of removing 7 days free period?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
That's the main purpose of the bill. Thank you, sir.
So I'm going to go back. Thank you, Rep. Flores. Now I'm just going to go ahead and move up on item A, House Bill 2327, to ensure that the expenditure authority designated in the Annual Appropriations Act retains exclusive control over all funds appropriated to it. I know that the House Committee on Ways and Means, including the House Committee on JGO, sought comments from the Attorney General's office. I asked that all the members note that I had followed up yesterday in regard to their comment, but that comment will not be ready until tomorrow. So can I get a motion that we table House Bill 2327 upon receiving the AG's?
Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry, we're still
sorry
back
to cut
into.
you off. Can we rise back to the committee level? We're still in the committee of the whole. Now we're discussing, unless we're going to be releasing Attorney Glass. Are we going to be releasing him already?
Yes, we will. After that rebuttal, then we can release him,
Oh,
right?
regarding this.
Yes.
Okay.
No, but I think we cannot make
Madam
any
Chair?
motion. We cannot make any motion in the committee as a whole. We have to rise back to our committee meeting to make those motions.
Okay, so we will accept Attorney Glass's comment in regard to 2336. 26. 2327, sorry. Oh, shoot, I'm so confused. 23. 36, which was what recess? We're back from recess, and again, I apologize to the general public. I'm still very nervous. I don't want to sit up here anymore. The next session we have, I'm going to sit down there where the councils are. That way, the pressure's off me, or where Attorney Glass is sitting. But can I ask the members of the committee, please, can I get a motion to rise back to committee?
So move, Madam Chair.
And there was a second. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. And now going back, we are now back on agenda item 4, old business. Item A, House Bill 2327, to ensure that the expenditure authority designated in the Annual Appropriation Act retains exclusive control over all funds appropriated to it. This bill was introduced by Rep. Joseph Flores, and I had sought comments from the AG's office. However, because we have not yet received it, may I ask that I get a motion to table House Bill 2327 until we receive the comments from the Attorney General's office?
Motion to table, Madam Chair.
There's been a second to the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Cam, can you make note of that? Moving along on item B, letter B, House Bill 2333, the Keisha King Bell Reform Act to improve standards in bail proceedings by establishing bail procedures, authorizing denial of bail, imposing conditions of release, and protecting victims. The floor is open.
Madam Chair, since Attorney, Assistant Attorney General Robert Glass has made this testimony in support of House Bill 23-33, I like to move that we, not unless there's other proposed amendments to this proposed legislation.
Are there any other comments in regard to this proposed bill? Recognize Rep. Camacho.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do echo the sentiment of Rep. Sablan. We did hear from the Chief Solicitor of the Attorney General's office that the bill accordingly is the AG's office supports it in its current form. So I would like to move that Rep. Vato. I yield to Representative Vato.
Madam Chair, I know that, and this is a good legislation. I think it's necessary, but we also uh, got comments from the public defender's office, and sometimes the public defender and the AG's office don't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. But we have Mr. Robert Glass here, even with the Attorney General's comments that were submitted on this specific legislation. I don't know if it's this specific legislation. Sorry, it is, right? Would it be possible for the committee to also consider? It's easy to just read what the public defender's position on this legislation is, but would it be too much to ask the members of this committee if we can also have an audience with the public defender's office, just so that when we get into session and we're going to address this legislation, we don't get caught from a different angle, not just on its on the position of the public defender. We've run into this issue with one of the legislations that Rep. John Paul Sablan had introduced in the 21st and in the 22nd legislature, that they supported the legislation. As soon as they got into on the floor, there was a different position on it that we had to pull back the legislation when we were going to act on it on that day. So maybe, I don't know, maybe the public defender can present his position to this body rather than just, because I mean, we can read what he stated, and obviously he's going to disagree. Mr. Attorney Glass has had the opportunity to speak on it. Maybe we can afford the public defender's office at least the same opportunity to speak before this body, if there's no objection from the members.
Can I just say something, Rep. Atal? So, you know, I'm very, I respect your comment. And I do respect the position of the public defender in its task to represent defenders of crime. But I do also understand that there is a nature of also our duty to protect the community as a whole. And the bill is very clear based on the facts and findings that this particular incident could have been avoided should there have been any more mechanisms that strengthen the ability to keep this individual and this particular incident from happening. I do think that the judges have way too much discretion, and I do understand their position. However, I will stand firm that yes, the public defender's office has its position to defend and protect the civil rights of the defendant. But I still stand firm that we have to also protect our community in terms of an individual who has already been committed the crime, and the bail proceedings allow this to take place. Being a former clerk of court, I do see the issues that arise from that, and I do agree that the judges are given way too much discretion. So I would like to open this for continued debate. I don't feel it's necessary to invite the public defender, but if the committee would like that, then I would like to take a vote on that if that's the case.
Madam Chair, does you have the floor? I don't have a problem with the legislation. I actually signed off on this legislation, but the case that we're presenting here on the findings is a specific case. Whereas multiple other cases also that we need to take into consideration. This case is very clear that's being used on the purpose and findings to justify this legislation. That's why I support the legislation. But we got to remember that when we're acting on the legislation, it's not only going to be reflective on this specific case. There's other multiple cases that we need to take into consideration. That's the only reason why I asked that if we can get an audience also with the public defender's office to kind of see where they're coming from in regards to what types of cases. If this is just a specific case, and every case that's similar to this case is what we're going to be voting on this specific legislation. That's why I support the legislation, because it's talking about that case, and the findings and purposes are very strong because the evidence is there. But there's also other cases that may be locked into this specific statute if it's signed into law, that is not in the same context as what's being described in this legislation. Like I said, I have no problems with the legislation. Its findings are very strong, and it's specific to what had transpired like 2 3 years ago. And it's a strong legislation. Nobody's against getting these people off the streets. But when we're working with statutes, it's going to encompass everything else outside of that realm. So we just got to be careful when we do that. We've been here long enough to say that sometimes it's a good legislation, and then they support the legislation. Unfortunately, there's also detrimental effects to it. So if the committee sees fit that we should push forward the legislation, I respect the committee members and I respect the chair. Like I said, the bill itself is a very good bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Rep. Atzel. And again, this is very specific to bail, the Bail Act. And the rules are very specific in the judicial court. But the argument again and again would be the judges exercise way too much discretion. If we move to take this out and of committee and take in everybody's comments and put this in there, put it in that, then I can respect that. But this is when they are given the opportunity for a bail hearing. And when you go in there, you can go in on a Friday and they'll call a judge you can't call them after 5. They're going to have to, make their claim. But the thing is, they've already been charged for some kind of criminal act. They were arrested for whatever purpose. So that the rule in the court and the rule that's already established by that, we're not saying to take it away. That we can't do that. And that's understood. What we're saying is we need to afford both parties, especially the prosecution in this predicament, to have this safeguard so that they're also protecting the community, let alone the victim. So again, that's where I stand. We can have this debate, protecting the community, let alone the victim. So again, that's where I stand. We can have this debate. If anything, and obviously we're going to go back and forth in this in the matter of time. I'd like to hear from the rest of the members if they want to invite the PD to come in and discuss that, or what other solutions to this do we have? Anybody else have a comment? Rep. Castro.
I just like to say the intent of the bill is pretty good. In fact, when looking at this situation, the victim was my classmate. So, but looking at the comments from the public defender, I also, when this issue came about, I was like, the government itself needs to put more emphasis on training for law enforcement. And, like I think that's one gap that if we were to vote on this issue, because there's a lot of strong comments here from the public defender's office that we may need more comments to hear from the opposing side.
Thank you, Rep. Castro. So I just want to point out something real quick from the AAG's office. So the bill allows prosecutors to bring bail modifications when a defendant has committed a violation of bail conditions. The bill ensures that those who violate their bail by the commission of a new offense or fail to appear for their court hearing will be denied bail. This ensures appearances of defendant and protects the community from repeat of violators. So again, it goes back to the criminal or the person, the defendant, right? They just don't show up sometimes. They violate their probation. Therefore, becoming now a part of this community yet again to possibly commit another crime. But what would this committee like to do with this? And I'd like to, do we invite the PD to come back? And if we want to vote on that, then we can. Recognize Congressman Probst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If that's an option, as you mentioned, to have the public defender come in again for some talks, I would appreciate it. Just as we move forward, again, I appreciate your bill and the work that has been put into it. But it's just, I think for all of us here, I think it would be able to provide us more clarification on any questions we may have, if that's acceptable to you. Thank you.
Did you want my honest opinion? Okay, again, this bill is very sensitive. I think it's also sensitive for a lot of people, including the family. And it's not just isolated to this one particular case. I do see this as protecting the future of our community, and especially women and some men, if that ever happens. However, I would then, can I get a motion to table 2333 and to seek, to ask the Public Defender's Office to appear and present their position on House Bill 2333. There's been a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 23-36. To amend 9 CMC Sections 203 and 204 and for other purposes. The floor is open. So this was the initial bill that Rep. Flores was talking about prior to our recess, because there seems, what I see here is maybe we can table this and put it back to committee, redefine the caption. It's not very clear to me just reading this on the caption. So can I get a motion to table 2336? And we can seek further comment and clarity from Rep. Flores and the rest of the committee.
So moved.
There's been a second. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Cam, please take note. Moving along, House Bill 23-37 to amend the Department of Public Safety's time period to produce police, traffic, and criminal investigation reports from 10 days to 3 days. The floor is open. Recognize Rep. Probst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have seen comments for and against this bill, and have received some comments from police officers as well who have talked with us about this. The concern is with regard to something that was mentioned earlier by Assistant Attorney General Robert Glass, with regard to the penalties for the police officers, and the overall pressure that it puts on the officers. Because generally speaking, we would say, well, this is great. It's going to have to make them work faster. They have to be more efficient. They have to get this work done. On the downside of this, the concern is that if it's a minor fender bender, it's not so much of a thing. But if it's a more serious accident, the time can change. And yes, I understand they can request for more time. But from a police officer's viewpoint, sometimes the police officer may not get along with their supervisor, for example. And this happens many times. There is politics at DPS. And the supervisor does not like this officer and says, I want it done in 3 days. And he says, and he asks for more time and he's denied the time or something like that. That is meaning that he's going to have now this put in his file and penalized when the and then you have to try to prove his point. It really puts the onus and a lot of pressure on the officer, and that's concerns that have been brought up by some officers with regard to this. The time sensitivity based on the severity of the case and everything, and the number of reports that some of them have to write on a regular basis doing their job. So this is just something to take into consideration. Thank you, Madam Chair and colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Rep. Probst. Rep. Flores.
Thank you. Well, I do understand your comments regarding some of police officers. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes the supervisor doesn't like the officer, but it's all comes back to you as a police officer. This bill basically, the way it's supposed to be written or how to be interpreted is it's not a investigation, a total investigation that goes to the finding that you need more evidence. It's just basically to certify more easier for when you get into a bumper accident or you get burglarized. Is the police officer to make that report in a timely manner within 3 working days for you to claim your property that has been damaged or been robbed. It's not a thorough investigation that we're gonna investigate and the person that committed a crime to go to court. It's just the initial preliminary investigation that whenever you get involved in an accident or get robbed, that you go to the police station and you get a copy that you've been involved in an accident, you got robbed, but you can claim it in insurance that, hey, I just got robbed, but I got robbed or got into an accident. This is my claim. Can you fix my car or I need to get insurance to recover my property? But as far as a criminal investigation to further, that's beyond. You can go after the 3 working days if a further investigation, like let's say a rape case. The first initiation of a rape case, the police officer have to do the report, to do the initiation investigation, to continue the investigation, the preliminary officer. But if you're going to give them a grace period more for, it will be time of an essence with the investigative if a crime has been committed. We need to it's the preliminary investigation that the officer needs to work before he knocks off of work, that after 3 working days, at least the preliminary report, you're done. The initial investigation of what transpired on that day when you work, that the crime has been committed or any bumper or any accident is just initiation report. The further investigation come later after.
Are you done, Rep.
Yes,
Flores?
yes.
Also, I have a comment, and being a part of this system, I do understand your sentiment, Rep. Flores. Many times, I had one incident where I had to wait for almost 2 months for a report. I don't know why a police officer would have to file a 3-day extension when the due diligence is already on the police officer who had been trained, who graduated from an academy, who has some level of literacy and how to write and draft these reports. So can I get a motion then to table? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rep. Castro.
Thank you for your comment, Chair. I agree with the comment earlier about like this is more of like an internal issue that needs to be resolved. When we look at a lot of these like the legislation, it's good legislation. However, there is when you ask ourselves, yes, the police officers graduate from a police academy. Is it CALIA certified? Is it CALIA accredited? Is it aligned with national best practices and standards?
Mhm.
The answer is no. So these kind of issues, there's a gap in training, there's a gap in um, so in essence, for example, when we're talking about insurance, the question we should also ask us is, why does a police officer need to write a police report for a traffic accident, for example? In most of the countries, the insurance hash that out. Um, so I'm looking at this like, are we doing the private sector's job? Like when I got into an accident in the mainland, it's just State Farm that dealt with the insurance provider. Just asked me some questions and then they paid it out. I didn't need a police report. So I agree with what Representative Ed Probst is saying. I could see where this could be, um, it's going to create a big bottleneck. I mean, I think the issue is not a matter of writing the report. The issue is a matter of training and standards within the department. And I think that's what we should focus on. Like, for example, legislation requiring DPS to be, CALIA certified, DOC to be certified by the industry, the corrections So the same thing for fire. If we did something like that, that would address a lot of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Castro. I'm sorry, Rep. Aldan, can I, Rep. Probst, real quick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize if I might have missed it, but did we get any comments from the new commissioner of DPS, Commissioner Bermudez?
We did seek his comments, but we did not receive any comments. So, and again, I do support the sentiment that this is more of an internal policy and procedure. I don't think that we should be, making a decision on this because this is more internal. And I would like to offer my time to Rep. Aldan, who wanted to make a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Rep. Flores, no, you're retired, right, as a police officer. As I'm looking at Section 3, the enactment, number 19, right, where it says an officer who fails to provide a written report within 3 days or within the time allotted, requesting in writing support of good cause, granted, whatever, shall be penalized by suspension without pay for 3 days of not more than 3 days for a responsible officer. And do you think, I feel, I mean, I understand law enforcement, but not to the extent that you would, because, different military and, police officers, that would place an undue burden for them to rush and not write a quality report or investigation. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm thinking like, gee, kala natatsotsonik na yun, sadik, and then the fact that we're gonna put them under suspension without pay, that's to me, I'm thinking that we're placing the officers in undue stress. You know what I mean? So,
Done.
thank you.
Rep. Flores, you can, rebuttal. Can we keep it please to 2 minutes? I know we're moving along. So Rep. Flores, please.
Okay. I do understand you're saying about giving a pressure to this officer to do a report. Like I mentioned earlier, this is just basically a preliminary investigation. It's a simple report. Could be it's just the informant giving the nature of the crime. It's just to have a classification to you to classify. You responded to a scene. You classify criminal mischief. You just classify. You do report, initial report that this is what transpired, and then that's a further investigation come after your initial investigation. It's just for you to do a preliminary report. Then as far as giving a verdict, you got to remember, officers responded to a scene or a complaint in a given day, maybe 5, 10. Imagine a police officer responded that day 5, and then he works the next day again and respond 5. That's 10, right? And then in a given day, the officers actually were given a time for them to do the police report. Giving them that time grace period is for them to push them to make sure that their police report and issue are done before they're knocked off or they go on leave. I don't like the chairwoman says experience not receiving a report for 1 month. The reason behind these 3 days is to make sure that officer do the report before they're knocked off or they go on leave. You're not gonna wait for them for 1 month. You need that paper to start your initial claim.
Thank you, Rep. Flores, and I'd like to close the debate on this real quick. Cam, I hope you're taking notes. Can I get a motion to table 2337 for further discussion from the committee, please? There's been a motion to table 2337. May I also recommend that Rep. Flores, please, if we can work together, Cam, with all the other comments that were submitted in regard to all of Rep. Flores's bills, can we clean this up, work with him, put in the comments and work with the rest of the members also, and we can maybe call another informal meeting to discuss that. I appreciate it. There's been a second. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. So this brings us now to House Bill 2338 to establish provisions for jaywalking and other purposes. I know that the AG had made a comment, and so did, I don't know if you guys saw the comment from MBA and Commerce. The floor is open. Rep. Castro?
I thought we already had a public law regarding jaywalking. I remember, like, way back in the 90s. Council, do you recall any?
Chair, there's no jaywalking law. It's only crossing other than a crosswalk. So jaywalking actually supersedes because it supersede the crossing other than a crosswalk to put more teeth into it.
Okay.
Can I recognize Rep. Sablan?
If I may ask the author of the bill, since he mentioned we don't have an existing jaywalking legislation or statutes, but do we have the infrastructure markings for jaywalking here to enforce even this proposed legislation?
Actually, if the bill passed, jaywalking is gonna use the pedestrian crosswalk. That's the marking for a pedestrian to cross. If you cross other than a crosswalk, that's the jaywalking. That's where the statute comes in. You're not crossing other than where it's designated for you to cross the street.
Yeah, understood, Madam. I think I still have the floor. But how about with the concerns offered by Chief Solicitor Robbie Glass that the 200 feet? I'm sure we have roads that are less than that. Are you amenable if we were to push this? I mean, we cannot just, there's roads already existing, like the example what that was tossed out, the our Garpan area there, Motel Street. I'm sure those roads are not 200 feet. And how do we enforce this? There's going to be inconsistencies on our infrastructure roads here.
Recognize Rep. Castro.
Thank you, Chair. So one thing, maybe to improve this bill is to put some kind of language that every intersection is by default a crosswalk, or every time there's a road, like an intersecting road, by default that's a crosswalk. But I echo Representative Sablan's concern is, like, right now we don't have the appropriate markings. In the 90s, I remember, like, DPS had some nice, illuminated, solar powered crosswalks throughout Precinct 2 and Beach Road. But I think we definitely need to add some kind of language to to be reflective, because right now our infrastructure in regards to crosswalk is, I mean, we don't have enough crosswalk, like marked crosswalks. But maybe if it was like some kind of language designating any you know, intersecting road, by default will be the crosswalk. It doesn't have to be painted. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Castro. Recognize Rep. Probst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're running out of time. I'll make this brief. I did read the comments submitted, one of them particularly from MVA, and I do agree with their sentiments. You know, we need to be prioritizing more crosswalks and also that they are well maintained. I'm sure we all know it just by taking a walk or driving that we have so few actually properly designated crosswalks. And so many of us would be in violation of jaywalking because there would be one within the designated area, but perhaps we couldn't see it. It's almost like the proverbial cart before the horse. My strongest recommendation, Madam Chair and colleagues, would be that we work on our infrastructure and fix that before looking at penalizing anyone for jaywalking at this point. Sometimes we just don't really have much of a choice. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Rep. Sablan, Rep. Castro, and Rep. Probst. Recognize Rep. Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, the main purpose actually of this jaywalking bill is to police actually more the pedestrian crossing the street. For instance, let's say everybody will go on Beach Road. There's a crosswalk. Let's say like right in front of CDA or like Beach Club. There's a crosswalk in the bus stop. People are crossing right in front of the store, like further about 20 feet, 30 feet. It's just to control the pedestrian crossing the street, to make them ensure that there's a crosswalk. Go to the designated crosswalk and stand there so the motorists can stop. Because we see motorists just stop right in the middle to have somebody cross the street. And that will basically something will cause an accident. It's just to control the traffic of the pedestrian crossing the street. This is how the bill basically was written about, to control the pedestrian. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Flores. I do wholeheartedly agree with all the sentiments. However, I still do believe that we need to strengthen this bill. Recognize Rep. Atto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, you're absolutely right. But if the author is amenable, that maybe what we can do is bring in DPW. We already know that the federal government's dishing out a bunch of funds under federal highway right now, and I'm sure that safety is a big part of it. I think maybe that's something that we can talk with the Department of Public Safety Secretary and his team to see if they can include this in the federal highway funds that we'll be receiving, so that we can actually understand where the designated rights of ways will be located in the CNMI, and we can move forward from there. I think the legislation in itself is the intent is to protect the pedestrians and also the drivers on the road, right? I mean, we're supposed to be defensive drivers. Unfortunately, some people are not very defensive drivers. So, the legislation is to protect both the drivers and the people crossing the street. But I believe if we give it a little bit more time, and if the author is amenable to that, we can actually bring in DPW and see what the kind of like the master plan of the federal highway that they will be proposing to Department of Transportation, so that we can actually include this in the cost, so that we wouldn't be arguing, we wouldn't be debating about what 200 feet is when we can have already designated crosswalk areas through the master plan of DPW and the U.S. Department of Transportation, if that's something that the members would be included. But I know that the Department of Transportation are allocating additional funds to the territories and the states that will be addressing safety in the streets. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Atto. And I also do agree. We don't want to have the same incident of Precinct 3's gap plan revitalization when it was nice. Everyone can drive through. They made it cement. Now we're breaking it down again to make it what it was before. And without clear planning, clear legislation, collaborative efforts between all parties involved, including the rider and public entities that will allow us the process to be involved as community members, May I suggest that we table 23-38 in consultation and with Rep. Flores, the comments received in regard to this bill, and also request comment from DPW as well, and to include Federal Highway. Can I get a motion? There's been a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Table House Bill 23-38. Bringing us down to item 5, new business. Can I recognize Rep. Camacho?
Thank you, Madam. Are you to Rep. Sablan?
My apologies. I think we still have one more in old business. Oh, that was, yes, sorry, so clarified, sorry.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one making mistakes this morning, Rep. Sablan. Thank you so much for being the final person to that. I appreciate it. I recognize Rep. Camacho.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in the interest of time, and also carefully looking at the legislations under item 5 on new business, I don't see any comments, so I would like to ask if there's no objection that we table all legislation under new business and solicit comments from the necessary agencies.
Being that there's no objection to the motion, can I get a second?
Second.
And it's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving us down to item number 6, miscellaneous. Any miscellaneous comments? Rep. Castro, I recognize Rep. Castro.
Thank you, Chair. So just back onto the jaywalking bill. We just may want to look into Title 9 of the Vehicle Code, subsection 5404, crossing at other than a crosswalk, and modify that legislation possibly. Oh, this is the one? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Castro. Cam, did you take note of that, please? So we are all now moving down to item 7, adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn? There's been a motion to move. It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.